Keep your fruit. We told you before, we're not leaving this land.
"I heard you don't have a wife. My daughters are perfect for you," said the old Apache woman I helped. The sun was beginning to dip behind the distant mountains, painting the desert sky in shades of orange and pink. A lone man drove along the dusty road, the hum of his old car the only sound for miles. He had been traveling for hours, his mind heavy with thoughts about life, loneliness, and the strange twists that had brought him to this remote part of the country. His name was Daniel, a quiet man in his late 30s, with eyes that had seen more than his fair share of disappointment. He had no family nearby, no close friends, and no one who truly knew him. His life had become a routine of work and solitude, a cycle he could neither escape nor fully embrace. As he rounded a bend, his car began to make a strange, grinding noise. He slowed, pulling over to the side of the road. The engine coughed, sputtered, and finally died, leaving him sitting in silence, the only sound now the wind whistling through the desert canyons. He tried to restart the car, but it was no use. Daniel sighed, feeling a familiar pang of frustration. He knew he would have to walk to find help, but as he stepped out of the car, he noticed something unusual in the distance, a figure struggling along the edge of the road. It was an elderly woman, carrying a heavy bundle of supplies across the desert heat. Her steps were slow and measured, each one a testament to her determination. Daniel watched for a moment, recognizing the exhaustion etched into her bent shoulders. Without thinking much, he walked toward her, the dust rising under his boots. "Excuse me, ma'am," he called gently. "Do you need help?" The woman paused, her dark eyes meeting his. There was a flicker of surprise, quickly replaced by a quiet warmth. She nodded slowly, shifting the heavy bundle on her shoulder. Daniel approached, taking some of the weight from her arms. "Here, let me help you with that," he said. She allowed him, and together they carried the load a short distance toward a small cluster of adobe houses that seemed to emerge naturally from the desert. As they walked, Daniel learned her name was Maria, and that she lived alone in this part of the community. Her hands were weathered, her skin lined from years under the sun, yet her movements were careful and deliberate, full of dignity despite the struggle. Daniel felt an unusual sense of calm as he walked beside her. There was no need for forced conversation, no need to explain who he was or why he was alone. Sometimes silence carried more meaning than words, and today it felt like a bridge connecting two lives that would otherwise never meet. When they reached her small home, Maria gestured for him to set the bundle down. "Thank you, young man," she said, her voice soft yet firm. "Not many stop to help these days." Daniel smiled, shrugging slightly. "It's nothing," he replied, though he knew that it was not entirely true. Something inside him stirred, a feeling he had not experienced in years, an inexplicable warmth that came from helping someone in need without expecting anything in return. Maria insisted he stay for a while, offering him water in a simple clay cup. Daniel accepted, sitting on a worn wooden bench as he watched her move gracefully around her modest home. There were signs of a life lived with care. Handmade blankets folded neatly on the bed, dried herbs hanging from the ceiling. A small garden of desert plants thriving despite the harsh conditions outside. Daniel noticed photographs of people he assumed were her family, though there was little indication of who they were. The warmth of the home, combined with Maria's quiet strength, made him feel unexpectedly at ease. As they talked, Maria shared small stories about her life, stories that were rich with history yet simple in their telling. She spoke of her childhood in the mountains, of how she had learned to survive in the harsh desert, and of the values she had held dear: hard work, honesty, and respect for others. Daniel listened intently, realizing how little he had shared of himself with anyone in years. For some reason, he felt he could trust this woman, though they had only just met. Her words were not filled with judgment or pity. Instead, they carried wisdom, the kind that comes from a lifetime of observation and experience. After a while, Maria asked about Daniel's life, and he spoke cautiously, revealing just enough to satisfy her curiosity. He told her about his work, his solitary life, and the small disappointments that had gradually shaped him into the man he had become. Maria listened without interruption, nodding occasionally, her eyes never leaving his. There was an understanding in her gaze, a recognition that went beyond words. Daniel felt a strange mixture of comfort and unease. He had never been so openly seen, so quietly understood by someone outside of himself. It was a sensation that left him both grateful and hesitant. As the sun began to set completely, Maria spoke in a tone that was both gentle and firm. "You are welcome here whenever you need rest," she said. "The desert can be harsh, and it is good to have someone to help each other." Daniel nodded, feeling a lump in his throat. It was not often that anyone offered him such unconditional kindness. He realized that this encounter, which had begun with a simple act of helping someone carry a heavy load, had already started to change the way he viewed his own life. It was as if the desert itself had conspired to place him exactly where he needed to be, at least for this moment. Before leaving, Daniel insisted on helping Maria with her remaining chores, moving a few supplies inside and watering her small plants. Each task felt oddly significant, a silent ritual that connected him to a world he had long ignored. Maria watched him with quiet approval, her presence both comforting and grounding. When he finally prepared to leave, she handed him a small packet of dried herbs. "For your journey," she said simply, "may it remind you that kindness always returns." Daniel accepted it with gratitude, feeling the weight of her gesture more than the weight of the bundle he had carried earlier. As he walked back to his car, the desert now bathed in the soft light of twilight, Daniel felt a sense of purpose he had not known for years. The world, which had often seemed indifferent to him, suddenly felt alive with possibility. He realized that helping someone, even in the simplest ways, could open doors to connections that were otherwise unimaginable. And though he did not yet know where this path would lead, he felt a quiet determination to continue on it, to remain open to the unexpected kindness and wisdom that the world, and people like Maria, could offer. Daniel started his car again, the engine humming back to life, and he glanced toward Maria's home one last time. She waved softly, a small, knowing smile on her face, as if she understood that this meeting was only the beginning of something larger. He waved back, feeling a strange mixture of gratitude and curiosity. Who were the people she spoke of? What did she see in him that he had long forgotten about himself? And most importantly, what would happen the next time their paths crossed? Driving away, Daniel could not shake the image of Maria, her strength, her grace, and the quiet power of her words. It lingered in his mind like a seed planted in fertile soil, waiting to grow into something meaningful. He realized that the desert, with all its emptiness and harshness, had given him a gift, a reminder that human connection, even in its simplest form, could bring warmth, purpose, and unexpected hope into a life that had grown cold with isolation. By the time night fully settled over the desert, Daniel had reached a small town where he could get his car repaired. But even as he dealt with practical concerns, his thoughts kept returning to Maria, her home, and the strange, almost magical way that helping someone had opened a door into a new world. He felt something stirring within him, a curiosity, a sense of belonging, and the faint but persistent hope that maybe, just maybe, his life was about to change in ways he could never have predicted. That night, as he lay in a modest motel bed, Daniel found himself replaying the events of the day in his mind. Every gesture, every word, and every glance carried weight and meaning. He thought about the simplicity of kindness, the dignity of effort, and the quiet strength of someone who had lived a life shaped by hardship, yet remained generous and open. It was a reminder that life, despite its challenges, always offered opportunities for connection, growth, and unexpected joy. Daniel could not stop thinking about Maria and her home. Something about the simplicity of her life and the quiet dignity she carried had left a deep impression on him. He returned to the small town for a few days to get his car fixed, but his mind wandered constantly to the desert, to the warmth in Maria's eyes, and to the gentle way she had spoken to him. By the time his car was ready, he had made a decision. He wanted to visit her again, not out of obligation, but because something inside him felt drawn to her world. The next morning, he drove back along the dusty road, the sun rising slowly and casting a golden light across the desert. As he approached Maria's home, he noticed her tending to her small garden, her hands moving carefully over each plant. She looked up and her face lit up with a smile when she saw him. "You came back," she said simply. Daniel smiled in return. "I wanted to see how you were doing," he replied, "and well, I wanted to visit again." Maria nodded, her expression unreadable but welcoming, as if she had expected this. Daniel spent the day helping Maria with her chores. He carried water for the garden, fixed a broken gate, and even helped prepare a simple lunch. The work was hard under the desert sun, but Daniel felt no exhaustion, only a growing sense of purpose. He noticed the rhythm of Maria's life, the way she moved with care, the way she treated every task as important, no matter how small. It was a lesson in patience, in dedication, and in finding meaning in the simplest of acts. During a break, Daniel sat on a rock near the garden while Maria prepared herbs for drying. "You have been kind," she said softly. "Not many stop to help others without asking for something in return." Daniel shrugged, unsure of how to respond. "I don't know," he said honestly. "I guess it just felt right." Maria nodded, her eyes thoughtful. There was a quiet understanding between them, a recognition of character that did not require words. Daniel felt strangely exposed, yet safe, as if he could be himself without fear of judgment. As the afternoon passed, Daniel noticed two women approaching the home. They were Maria's daughters, he assumed, and they moved with the confidence and ease of people who knew hard work intimately. One of them, a woman with dark hair and clear, strong eyes, carried a basket of vegetables from the nearby field. The other, younger and quieter, followed behind, her movements careful and observant. Daniel greeted them politely, and they returned his greeting with a mixture of curiosity and respect. Maria spoke to her daughters quietly, introducing Daniel as the man who had helped her the other day. She explained how he had noticed her struggle and had stepped in without hesitation. The elder daughter smiled at Daniel, a subtle warmth in her eyes, while the younger one studied him with quiet interest. There was no awkwardness in their meeting, only a calm observation, as if Maria's daughters were assessing the character of this outsider who had entered their lives. Daniel felt a mixture of nervousness and gratitude. He had expected a simple, quiet visit, but now he found himself part of a small world he had never known, a world filled with family, responsibility, and quiet strength. Over the next few days, Daniel returned several times, each visit drawing him deeper into their lives. He helped with daily chores, shared meals with them, and listened to stories of their past. He learned that Maria's daughters had grown up in this harsh environment, learning resilience and compassion from their mother. They had their own routines, their own dreams, and their own moments of quiet joy. Daniel admired them, not only for their beauty and grace, but for their strength and integrity. One evening, as the sun set and the desert cooled, Maria spoke to Daniel in a way that startled him. "I have watched you," she said, her voice calm but firm. "You are kind. You do not seek reward for your actions. You have a good heart." Daniel nodded, unsure of what to say. Maria continued, her words carrying the weight of experience and wisdom. "I heard you do not have a wife," she said. Daniel blinked, surprised. He had not expected such a personal comment, and his mind raced. "My daughters are strong, good women," Maria said slowly, "and I believe one of them would be a good partner for you." Daniel felt a mixture of shock, confusion, and humility. He had come to help, not expecting anything in return. And yet here was Maria, offering him a connection he had never sought, presenting an opportunity to belong to a family he had never imagined. He struggled to find words, unsure whether to respond, unsure whether such an offer was a test, a joke, or something real. He could feel the weight of her gaze, the seriousness in her tone, and the sincerity behind her words. He spent the next few moments in silence, letting the words sink in. The desert around them seemed to hold its breath, the quiet vastness echoing the sudden tension in his heart. Daniel realized that this was not a simple proposal. It was an invitation to step into a life that demanded courage, honesty, and openness. Maria's daughters were not objects of curiosity or amusement. They were individuals with their own lives, desires, and expectations. And yet, in this moment, Daniel felt an unspoken trust that he could rise to meet their world if he chose to. Over the following days, Daniel observed Maria's daughters more closely. The elder one, whom he later learned was named Isabella, was confident, kind, and capable, taking care of the household with a quiet authority. The younger daughter, Elena, was more reserved, her curiosity hidden behind a thoughtful, watchful gaze. Daniel admired both of them, not only for their strength but for the way they carried themselves, with dignity, pride, and a deep sense of family responsibility. Each interaction, however small, felt significant, a step toward understanding their lives and values. During this time, Daniel also began to learn more about the Apache community. He noticed their deep respect for elders, their connection to the land, and the way family was woven into every aspect of daily life. It was a culture of honor, care, and observation, where actions mattered more than words and character was shown through deeds rather than promises. Daniel found himself humbled by their way of living, realizing how little he had truly understood about human connection before this experience. One afternoon, while helping Isabella carry water to the garden, she spoke quietly. "My mother is wise," she said, her voice calm but certain. "She sees things about people that others cannot. She respects honesty, kindness, and courage. She has seen that in you, Daniel." He paused, feeling a lump form in his throat. The weight of responsibility was sudden and real, and yet there was a strange comfort in being seen and appreciated for his true self. Elena, meanwhile, remained quiet, observing Daniel with an analytical gaze. He realized that trust could not be demanded, it had to be earned. Over the next few days, he made an effort to show patience, respect, and sincerity in every interaction. He helped with chores without complaint, listened without judgment, and engaged with the family in honest conversation. Slowly, he began to feel a sense of belonging, a feeling he had long thought impossible. One evening, Maria called him aside as they watched the desert sun set together. "Do not be afraid," she said gently. "What I offer is not about forcing you to choose. It is about understanding who you are and seeing if you belong to this family in heart and mind." Daniel nodded, understanding the gravity of her words. He realized that Maria's offer was not merely about marriage. It was about trust, integrity, and a genuine connection that could grow over time. The next few weeks passed in a delicate rhythm. Daniel continued to visit, sharing in daily life, learning from the family, and building quiet bonds. Each moment felt meaningful, each small gesture carrying weight. He began to feel a slow transformation within himself, a sense of purpose, connection, and hope that had been absent for many years. The desert, once a lonely expanse, now felt alive with possibility, carrying the promise of a life richer in meaning and human connection than he had ever imagined. By the end of part 2, Daniel had realized that Maria's offer was not a casual suggestion, but a reflection of trust and respect. The old woman had seen his heart, his actions, and his character, and had offered him a place in her family, not out of obligation, but because she believed he could belong. Daniel felt a mixture of gratitude, humility, and quiet wonder. He did not yet know what the future held, but he understood that he had been given a rare opportunity to step into a life shaped by kindness, integrity, and the bonds of chosen family. Daniel spent the next few weeks visiting Maria and her daughters regularly. Every day he came, he felt more connected to their lives and more aware of the strength it took to live as they did. He watched Isabella move through the household with quiet confidence, her hands deftly handling each task, whether it was tending the garden or preparing a simple meal. Elena remained reserved, but her sharp eyes noticed everything, quietly observing Daniel as if weighing his character. Daniel had grown fond of both women, not in a rush of romance, but with a deep respect for their intelligence, kindness, and the way they carried themselves. Despite this growing closeness, Daniel felt conflicted. He had lived a solitary life for so long that the idea of belonging to a family, of taking on responsibility for another person, seemed almost frightening. He had seen relationships fail, he had been hurt in the past, and he had convinced himself that solitude was safer. But now, in the presence of Maria and her daughters, he realized how much he had missed: the warmth of family, the comfort of trust, and the quiet joy that came from shared work and laughter. These thoughts filled him with both hope and fear. One afternoon, while helping Isabella repair a small fence around the garden, Daniel spoke openly about his feelings. I don't know if I'm ready," he admitted, his voice low. "I've been alone for so long, and I've made mistakes before. I don't want to hurt anyone." Isabella paused, her hands stilling on the fence. She looked at him with understanding, her eyes calm yet firm. "We all carry our pasts," she said gently. "What matters is what we do now, how we treat others, and whether we are willing to try. Fear is natural, but it should not stop you from doing what is right." Elena, who had been quietly observing from the porch, finally spoke. Her voice was soft but direct. "You have shown honesty, patience, and respect," she said. "Those are the qualities that matter in a family. Actions speak louder than words, and you have proven yourself." Daniel listened to them both, feeling a wave of emotion he could barely describe. Here were two women who judged him not for his past, not for his mistakes, but for who he was and how he lived in the present. It was a lesson in humility, and it made him realize how often he had let fear control his decisions. Despite their encouragement, Daniel still struggled internally. There were moments when he questioned whether he truly belonged. The idea of being part of a family, of taking on responsibilities he had never faced before, was overwhelming. He would sit alone in the desert at dusk, the wind whispering through the canyon, and think about what he truly wanted. He wondered if he could rise to meet the expectations of a family who trusted him so deeply. He wondered if he could honor Maria's faith in him. And most of all, he wondered if he could open his heart after so many years of solitude. Maria, sensing his inner struggle, spoke to him one evening as they watched the sun set over the mountains. "Do not rush yourself," she said quietly. "The heart knows its own time. What matters is that you are honest with yourself and with us. The choice is yours, and it must come from your own understanding, not from pressure or fear." Daniel felt a sense of relief hearing her words. She was not forcing him, not manipulating him, but giving him the space to reflect, to make a decision that was truly his own. It was an act of respect that he had rarely experienced in his life. Over the following days, Daniel tried to immerse himself fully in their lives without thinking too much about the future. He helped Isabella in the garden, learning which plants thrived in the desert soil and how to care for them. He spent quiet afternoons with Elena, listening as she shared stories of her childhood, of the lessons she had learned from her mother, and of the dreams she held for the future. Through these interactions, Daniel began to see the depth of the women's characters, their resilience, their thoughtfulness, and their capacity for love and patience. He realized that his respect for them was growing into something deeper, something meaningful and enduring. One morning, while gathering water from a nearby well, Daniel experienced a moment of clarity. He realized that his fear of commitment had been tied to his fear of failure, his fear of being judged, and his fear of losing control over his life. But in the quiet strength of Maria and her daughters, he saw a different kind of life, a life where trust, patience, and understanding were more important than perfection. He understood that belonging to a family did not mean losing oneself. It meant growing, learning, and sharing life with others who valued him for who he truly was. This realization gave him courage, though it was tempered by the understanding that the path ahead would require patience and care. As the days turned into weeks, Daniel's relationship with Maria's family deepened. They shared meals, laughed together, and worked side by side, each moment building a sense of trust and connection. Maria watched Daniel carefully, her eyes reflecting a quiet satisfaction. She saw how he was learning to balance respect with affection, how he was discovering the patience and understanding necessary to be part of a family. And she knew that the time was approaching when he would have to make a choice, not out of fear or obligation, but from the understanding that true belonging required a willing heart. One evening, after a long day of work, Daniel found himself sitting with Maria alone. The desert was quiet, the stars beginning to sparkle above, and the air was filled with the scent of sage and earth. Maria spoke softly, almost as if sharing a secret with the wind. "You have come far," she said. "You have learned to see, to understand, and to act with integrity. But the choice is yours. Do you wish to become part of our family, not because it is expected, but because your heart tells you it is right?" Daniel took a deep breath, feeling the weight of her words. For the first time, he realized that this was not about fear or hesitation, but about courage, the courage to open his heart, to embrace a life that was richer and more meaningful than he had ever imagined. Over the next several days, Daniel spent long hours in reflection. He walked alone through the desert, letting the wind carry away his doubts and fears. He thought about his past, the mistakes he had made, and the times he had chosen solitude over connection. But he also thought about the kindness he had received, the trust Maria had placed in him, and the warmth and strength of her daughters. He realized that life had given him a rare opportunity to step into a world where love, respect, and family were not just ideals, but lived realities, and he knew that he could not ignore it. Finally, one evening, Daniel returned to Maria's home with a sense of clarity he had not felt before. The sun was setting, casting golden light across the desert, and the air was filled with the quiet sounds of evening. He found Maria and her daughters in the garden working together to prepare for the night. Daniel approached them with a calm, steady heart. "I have thought about what you said," he began, his voice low but firm. "I was afraid at first because I did not know if I was ready. But I have realized that what I want is to be part of your lives, not out of obligation, but because it feels right. I am willing to learn, to grow, and to share life with you." Maria smiled softly, a mixture of pride and relief in her eyes. Isabella and Alina looked at him, their expressions reflecting quiet approval and warmth. Daniel felt a wave of emotion he could barely contain, gratitude, hope, and a deep sense of belonging. In that moment, he understood that the journey he had taken, from loneliness and fear to trust and connection, had transformed him in ways he had never imagined. He realized that courage was not the absence of fear, but the willingness to act despite it. That night, as they sat together watching the stars, Daniel felt a peace he had long sought. He understood that life was not about avoiding mistakes or fearing the unknown. It was about embracing the moments that offered growth, connection, and meaning. He felt gratitude for Maria's wisdom, for Isabella's strength, and for Alina's quiet insight. And he knew that, no matter what the future held, he had taken the first step toward a life filled with trust, love, and family. After weeks of reflection, Daniel had finally embraced the decision that had been quietly forming in his heart. He had chosen to step into a life he had once feared, a life of connection, trust, and responsibility. The desert, which had always felt vast and lonely, now seemed alive with possibility. He felt the warmth of belonging in a way he had never experienced before. Maria, Isabella, and Alina had opened a door for him, not just into their home, but into a world of shared life, values, and care. It was a gift he intended to honor with every action. Daniel's mornings now began with the rising sun, the golden light spilling across the adobe walls of Maria's home. He helped with daily chores, tending the garden alongside Isabella, repairing fences and collecting water from the well. Alina joined them when she had time, her quiet presence a calming force. Daniel had learned to move with patience, respecting the rhythm of their lives. The work was hard, but it was meaningful in a way he had never known. Each small task, whether planting seeds, carrying water, or preparing a meal, felt like a step toward building a life grounded in care and cooperation. One morning, as Daniel worked alongside Isabella in the garden, she spoke softly, her hands gently guiding his. "You have grown in ways you may not even realize," she said. "It is not just about helping with tasks. You have learned to listen, to understand, and to be patient. Those are qualities that will serve you well in life and in love." Daniel paused, feeling a lump in his throat. He had come to the desert seeking nothing more than to help someone in need, yet he had found wisdom, friendship, and the possibility of family. It was overwhelming, and yet deeply comforting. Alina, observing quietly from a nearby porch, approached Daniel later that afternoon. She handed him a small bundle of dried herbs, carefully wrapped in a cloth. "These are from the garden," she said, "for you. To remind you that growth takes time, and that care and attention bring life to even the driest soil." Daniel accepted the gift with gratitude, touched by her thoughtfulness. It was a simple gesture, but it carried profound meaning. In her words, he heard a reflection of his own journey, how patience, respect, and understanding had brought him to a place where he could belong. As the days passed, Daniel became more integrated into the family. He learned to anticipate needs, to offer help without being asked, and to participate in the small rituals of daily life that bound the family together. Meals were shared with laughter and conversation, chores were completed side by side, and moments of quiet reflection were respected. Maria watched all of this with a satisfied smile, recognizing that Daniel had not only accepted their offer, but had embraced the life that came with it. He had grown in humility, patience, and understanding, proving that he was worthy of trust and connection. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the mountains and the sky turned shades of purple and gold, Daniel found himself sitting alone with Maria. The desert was quiet, the only sounds the distant rustle of leaves and the gentle whisper of the wind. "You have chosen wisely," Maria said softly, her eyes reflecting the fading light. "You have seen that life is not only about self, but about others. You have learned that love and respect are earned through action, not words. And you have proven that your heart is open to care, to trust, and to belonging. Daniel nodded, feeling a deep sense of gratitude and humility. Her words were not just praise, they were confirmation that he had grown, that he had stepped into a life of meaning. Daniel also noticed subtle changes within himself. He felt less fear and more confidence in his ability to nurture relationships. He understood the value of patience, the power of empathy, and the importance of consistent care. He began to see that belonging to a family did not mean losing freedom. Rather, it meant finding a deeper purpose, a place where one's actions could make a real difference. He had discovered that love, trust, and respect were not abstract ideals but living experiences, cultivated daily through thoughtfulness, honesty, and effort. As he spent time with Isabella and Alina, Daniel observed their individual strengths. Isabella was strong, confident, and nurturing, capable of leading with quiet authority. Alina was thoughtful, observant, and reflective, bringing calm and insight to every situation. Daniel respected both of them deeply, appreciating their unique qualities and the ways in which they contributed to the family. He realized that he had not only been offered a chance at companionship, but also an opportunity to learn, grow, and become a better version of himself. One afternoon, while preparing for a small celebration to honor the harvest from their garden, Daniel found himself speaking with Isabella privately. "I have been afraid before," he admitted. "Afraid that I would fail, that I would not be enough. But being here with all of you has shown me that life is more about care, effort, and presence than perfection." Isabella smiled, placing a hand gently on his shoulder. "We all carry our fears," she said. "What matters is that you are willing to try, to be honest, and to act with integrity. That is what makes someone part of a family, part of life." Daniel felt a deep sense of relief and purpose. Her words reaffirmed the journey he had taken and the choice he had made. As the celebration began, the family gathered around a small table filled with fresh food from the garden. Maria, Isabella, and Alina shared stories and laughter, while Daniel listened and participated with genuine joy. He realized that belonging was not about titles or obligations. It was about presence, care, and mutual respect. Every smile, every shared story, every gesture of kindness reinforced the bonds that had grown over weeks of shared life. Daniel felt a sense of fulfillment and happiness he had never known. He was no longer an outsider. He was part of something larger, a family built on trust, understanding, and love. That night after the celebration, Daniel sat with Maria under the stars. The desert stretched endlessly around them, quiet and serene. "Life will continue to test you," Maria said gently, "but remember what you have learned here. Patience, kindness, honesty, and respect are the foundation of any life worth living. You have shown that you understand these truths and that you are ready to live them fully." Daniel nodded, feeling the depth of her wisdom. He knew that her guidance would remain with him forever, shaping not only his relationship with the family but his approach to life itself. Over the next months, Daniel continued to grow within the family. He developed a rhythm with Isabella and Alina, understanding their needs, supporting their dreams, and sharing in both work and leisure. The home became a place of warmth, laughter, and shared purpose. Daniel's confidence and sense of belonging strengthened, as he realized that family was not defined by blood alone, but by the bonds forged through care, respect, and shared experience. Daniel also began to think about his future in a way he had never dared before. He imagined building a life with these women, learning from them, and supporting them in return. He understood that love was not a fleeting feeling but a steady commitment, nurtured by patience, respect, and shared effort. He saw the value in small acts of kindness, the importance of listening, and the power of empathy. And he realized that by opening his heart to this family, he had opened himself to a richer, fuller life. As time passed, Daniel noticed subtle signs of change in Isabella and Alina as well. Their initial reserve and cautious observation transformed into warmth, trust, and genuine affection. They respected his honesty, admired his willingness to learn, and appreciated his quiet strength. The bonds between them grew, not through grand gestures but through everyday actions, sharing meals, working side by side, and offering support during challenges. Daniel understood that this was the true essence of family: connection, trust, and shared life. One evening, as they all sat together watching the sunset, Daniel felt a profound sense of peace. The desert, once vast and intimidating, now felt like home. He realized that kindness, patience, and courage had brought him here, and that the journey he had undertaken was more meaningful than he could have imagined. Maria, Isabella, and Alina had not only welcomed him into their lives, but had helped him discover a new depth of purpose, connection, and fulfillment. Daniel reflected on the lessons he had learned. That life was richer when shared, that fear could be transformed into courage, and that true belonging came from honesty, respect, and consistent care. He felt gratitude for the family that had shown him the value of trust and patience. And as the stars appeared in the night sky, he knew that he had found not only a home, but also a life filled with meaning, love, and hope. In the quiet of the desert night, Daniel finally felt whole. He understood that the journey was not over, but he was ready to face it with the lessons he had learned and the family that had become his heart. Maria smiled at him, Isabella reached out her hand, and Alina nodded quietly. And in that simple, unspoken understanding, Daniel knew he had truly found where he belonged. The story ended not with dramatic declarations or grand gestures, but with a quiet, enduring truth. That kindness, honesty, and trust could transform a life, and that family, chosen, nurtured, and respected, could bring warmth, purpose, and hope where loneliness had once reigned. Daniel had stepped into a new life, and he was ready to live it fully with courage, care, and love.